The following program is sponsored by Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County. This episode of Mosaic is brought to you in part by the Stacy and Mark Levy Center for Israel and Overseas.
Welcome to our 46th season of Mosaic. I'm your host, Susan Shulman Pertnoy. Mosaic is Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County's weekly news magazine, exploring the most critical issues facing Jews here and around the world. Since the October 7th attack by Hamas, antisemitism and hatred towards Jews has been on the rise in places that should be safe for all, college campuses. Today, we'll learn how our federation is partnering with the Jewish Agency for Israel to bring Israelis here to the United States. Their mission? To educate and inspire students and faculty around the country and stop the cycle of ignorance and hate. Meet them today on Mosaic. We're so proud to celebrate our community visionaries, donors who contribute $1 million or more, serving as an inspiration for all of Jewish Palm Beach.
Since October 7th, we have seen our community come together in ways we could not have anticipated. And that's what led to the Activating Jewish Life movement. The Activate Jewish Life movement is a first of its kind, intends to connect with families with children, to connect with teens, to connect with young adults, and ensure that they always feel as though they're part of something larger than themselves, being part of a larger Jewish community. It's such a unique opportunity to be able to launch a bold initiative just like this. The Activate Jewish Life movement is going to be a game changer. However people want to engage with Jewish life, we want to make sure that we are providing them with an opportunity to engage in ways that have relevance and meaning for them. Thanks to our partners in the Jewish community and our Federation agencies, what an opportunity we have to change the face of Jewish life.
Welcome back. Joining us today is Nati Shupak. She is the Chief Program Officer of the Jewish Agency for Israel, and Esther, who is an Israel Campus Fellow working in the Northeast. Welcome to Mosaic.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure to have you down here visiting. Nati, we have a very broad viewing audience, and most of them don't even know what Israel Campus Fellows program is. Can you describe that?
Yeah, the Israel Fellows are young adults, Israelis, who come here to work on campuses in Jewish communities for 1 to 3 years. They're usually in their late 20s, and they all graduated. They have at least a bachelor's degree. Some of them have a master's degree, and they really have very diverse backgrounds in terms of their professional experience, what they've learned on college and all of that. But what's common to all of them is that they all are Israelis that are passionate about the Jewish people and about Israel.
And why was there a need for Israel Campus Fellows?
Yeah, so obviously Israel is a huge part of Jewish identity and Jewish communities. And we see that one of the most important things is not just to talk about Israel, as this biblical land that we used to have, or, as something far away, but really Israel, modern day Israel, is about the people. So the first thing, if you want to connect people to their Jewish identity and to Israel, the first thing is to help them connect to Israelis.
What are some of the biggest challenges that students are finding on campus today?
Yeah. So I would say one is the obvious. We know that even before October 7, but especially since October 7, we know that campus atmosphere has been challenging. We know that there's a rise in antisemitism, in anti-Zionism on campus. Unfortunately, a lot of students have to deal with being uncomfortable sharing that they're Jewish or that they're Zionist. A lot of students lost friends because they were canceled after October 7. So all of a sudden, you know, your dorm friends are not talking to you, or your sorority or fraternity brothers and sisters are not talking to you, and that's really, really challenging. I would say another thing is that because of the intensity of emotions that everyone has since October 7, it becomes really difficult to talk even within the Jewish Zionist community. Each one that, you know, loves Judaism, supports Israel, they still each have their own nuances of narratives at looking at the situation. And it becomes really difficult to just be together. And I think that's challenging because facing hatred from outside is one thing, but feeling uncomfortable at home is another. And unfortunately, we see students that together would go to, you know, a Free the Hostages rally, but after that will each go their separate ways and they won't go grab coffee together, right, at the Jewish Center together. So that's really difficult and something that we really want to address. And I think the main thing that we have to remember, even with everything I said about anti-Semitism and the tents, I think that really what most students are facing is just regular college student stuff. It's school, they're stressed about school, they're stressed about their future. And one of the things that we really have to combat is indifference. Like, people don't care. So how do you make them care about their Jewish identity, about Israel? And I think that's really most students, they're not the loudest, but they are the majority of students who are just indifferent. And how do you make them care?
Wow, it sounds like you've got a very big job, Esther. What possessed you to become part of this program?
Yeah, so before I came here, I'm an economist. I used to work at the Ministry of Finance for several years.
Wow.
And after October 7 happened, I just felt that there is a mission, there is something that bigger than me, bigger than like staying in Israel and do a program abroad. And I just felt that I need to do something bigger than staying in Israel and work like as an economist. So I watch this kind of like protest that happens like in the news on campus colleges, and I felt like, hey, okay, like everything that happens in Israel affects directly on the Jewish community, on the Jewish people in abroad. So I was applying to this kind of job, to trying to also to bring like the story of my family, the background of my family, the
Which
story
is unique
of, like,
in and of itself.
Yeah, as Nati said, like Israel is not just like it's a very diverse country. So for me, coming to the diaspora Jewish and tell my story, my personal story, my family. I be me and myself. Like I wasn't born in Israel. I was born in Ethiopia, and I made Aliyah with my family when I was 5. And bring that outside of Israel and tell the students that Israel is a very diverse country. It was very meaningful, still meaningful to me, and educated about Israel, that it's not just like falafel and tchina. It's also like a lot of diversity in people and like, yeah.
Yeah, so when you tell the story, because truly most people are so naive and they have these preconceived notions of what Israelis are, these colonialists. I mean, how do they react when you tell them your story?
Yeah, so I feel like because the story of Ethiopian Jewish is not like, how do you say, famous. It's like they don't teach it in school here. So
Right.
meeting me and telling my story and telling them that I wasn't born in Israel. I made Aliyah, and the Zionism story of my family, it's very fascinating to them, and they're really find it very interesting to hear something new, to learn something new about Israel, which obviously they didn't know before. For example, last semester we had like the Sigd celebration. The Sigd is like a very unique Ethiopian Jewish celebration we used to celebrate in
What is it?
Ethiopia. It's like we celebrated 50 days after Yom Kippur. It symbolized the story of like the fulfilling the dream that like to come to Jerusalem. That was the dream of the Ethiopian Jewish. So they were fasting that day, like praying the whole day, going up in the big and high mountain in Ethiopia and praying to Jerusalem that one day we'll be there. It comes from the Ezra and Nehemiah book that he was like also dreaming about to come to the Holy Land. So we used to celebrate that, and now in Israel we keep doing that like every year. And I brought that to campus, and it was very colorful and like bring the culture of my family, like the food, but also the story and the history. And they find it very interesting because this is something they didn't know.
Yes, of course. Wow. Well, we want to hear more, but first we have to take our first break. We'll be right back after this brief message. Up next, we continue our discussion with Campus Israel Fellowship participants. Stay tuned. We're back with Nati and Esther talking about Israel Campus Fellows and their work on college campuses. So Esther was just telling us about a unique Ethiopian holiday that you brought to college where you're working. Mm-hmm. And the students there were enjoying it and were amazed, correct? You want to elaborate a little more about how they participated?
So it was first of all kind of bring the music, like Ethiopian music, Amharic, teaching them how to dance, which is my culture. Also, we had a lecture about the Ethiopian jewelry, like where did they came from? Because obviously you said like people think about Judaism as like being a white, but it's not. And to bring the story of Ethiopian Jewish, because they were separated from other diaspora Jewish, they kept the Bible as is, like they kept the Torah as is, which is also a unique story of Ethiopian Jewish because they were not part of the, how do you say, like
the Talmud.
Like the Talmud, like the modern Torah, they were kept what's written in the Torah.
Right.
So it's like a very pure Jewry.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, Esther brings such a richness to the campus. Mm-hmm. What exactly are the requirements to become a campus fellow?
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, there are some technical requirements. So, all of the fellows have to have at least a bachelor's degree, sometimes a master's degree, and they all have to be people of people, right? So, like to have conversations, to relate well to people, so they can build relationships and share their stories.
Is it a long interview process?
Yeah, it's a very long interview process. It takes a few months, nearly a year. And it includes psychological evaluations.
Sure.
People are moving here alone, without their family, without their support system. So you also have to make sure that they can handle it. And as you know, some of the campuses in the U.S. are very isolated. There isn't a huge Jewish community or Israeli students. So they have to be able to cope with all of that.
And how do you support that? How do you support them?
Yeah. So there's a training that happens in Israel before they assume this position. Some of it is one-day trainings in different places. Some of it is 10 days that we do a very intensive course. And we look at different things. We look at, some of it is educational, right? And to talk about the diversity in Israel, to talk about opportunities and challenges. And some of it is just, you're going to work in a different work culture. Right?
Yeah.
And the way that Israeli supervisors give feedback is very different from a way that an American supervisor will give feedback. So we also talk about those nuances of working in an American professional setting.
With security concerns now, how have you pivoted to make sure your programs are relevant?
Yeah, so I think all Jewish communities in the past few years, again, not just because of October 7, it started before. I think October 7 just blew it up a little bit and, spotlighted an issue that started a few years ago already. I think all Jewish organizations and institutions are just making sure to be aware that they're providing, secure places for people to meet. And I think it's very sad and it's very telling that you have to think about that.
Yeah.
Many, many years ago, I was a campus fellow in Uruguay in South America with the Jewish community there. And as you know, for many years, they had a lot of security protocols because of terror attack that Jewish organizations had there. And every time we had students come from the US to volunteer in South America, they were always shocked that Jewish institutions needed security. And I think about it a lot today because I don't think they would have been shocked today to see that.
Right.
So a lot has changed.
It's unfortunate, so unfortunate. Esther, what's a typical a day in the life of an Israel campus fellow on your campus?
Yeah. So basically it's prepare and think about in a year in advance to see like what kind of programs you need to do in order to bring Israel, of the voice of Israel, on campus. So it can be like meeting one-on-one coffee chat with students and get to know them much more deeply and have this like complicated and I would say hard topic issues sometimes, but also ask them like how they feel, how their exam was today. So meeting them in the daily life. And I'm teaching about diversity and ethnic groups in Israel, which is like a session, 6 sessions seminar with different groups of students teaching Hebrew. So it's very diverse.
Very busy.
And it's so nice and yeah.
Is there a set curriculum that you have to incorporate into the year?
Yeah, so there's no curriculum. And like Esther said, a big part of what we do is to just understand what people are really interested in. So even though I have a lot of things I'm excited about, I'm not just starting programs. So the fellows need to get to know the students and understand what would get them excited. So if you sit with a group of students and you hear that they're interested in Hebrew and in language, then you can start teaching Hebrew, right? If they're interested in food, let's cook Shabbat dinner together, right? And bring foods from different Jewish traditions to our Shabbat dinner.
Oh, that's great. How do you deal with the negative attitudes about Israel?
Yeah. So sometimes it's really hard to hear students are very critical about Israel and say sometimes really hard things. But I feel like trying to understand, like having a deep conversation with them and try to understand what they think that way. And that's the way I deal with that, like saying, hey, okay, I know you think differently, which is fine. You can be critical about the government of Israel or whatever Israel is doing right now, but I want us to talk. And I don't want it just to stay in your mind. That's it. Like let's try to have a talk and try to understand each other better. Can you relay one story about how your presence there has made a difference on campus? Yeah. So I was telling the story of the celebration of the Ethiopian holiday, which for me was very meaningful. So to bring the story of my family and bring the diverse in Israel. So it's very meaningful. But there's a lot of simple stories, deeply conversation, students come to my office sometimes just to be there because I'm Israeli, so they feel comfortable just to sit in my office and work from there. And sometimes they feel comfortable to come to me because I'm an Israeli to talk about how they feel with the hostages, things that happens right now in Israel, or everything that happens in Israel. They feel comfortable to come to me, and I feel like they have any safe space.
That's wonderful.
As an Israeli, and to come and talk to me.
It's really a terrific opportunity for college kids to have that outlet. We have to take our final commercial break. We'll be back in a few minutes after this message. Coming up, we look ahead to the future of this program. That's next on Mosaic. Did you know that you can now enjoy Mosaic on the go? Listen to the Mosaic podcast by scanning the QR code on the screen or find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We're so proud to celebrate our community visionaries, donors who contribute $1 million or more, serving as an inspiration for all of Jewish Palm Beach. Welcome back. We're joined by Nati and Esther of Israel Campus Fellows. And Nati, I want to ask you, how does Campus Fellows play into the rest of the Jewish Agency for Israel?
Thank you. It's a great question. So Jewish Agency, it exists nearly 100 years, and really it's about connecting the Jewish people and the strength of the Jewish people. So being able to have shlichim, to have emissaries who work in Jewish communities, who work in campuses, and they bring the Israeli story, but they also bring the Jewish story, because the story of Israelis is the story of a lot of the Jewish people. And they help connect those communities not just to Israel, but also to each other and also to other communities worldwide. Like I said, when I was a fellow in Uruguay, we had groups, of Jewish students coming from the United States, and that's part of the Jewish Agency mission, which is to strengthen and connect Jewish communities worldwide.
Not every school in the country is similar and dealing with the same issues on campus. Can you discuss this diversity?
Yeah, of course. So I think, it's a huge country, and there are many types of schools, and some of them, are near big cities, some of them are more isolated. And I think what we're seeing that has played out since October 7, in my opinion, it's a couple of things. One is we see that in places that are very close to cities or in cities, we see that a lot of the drama and the antisemitism is actually coming from outside, and it's people that are not students and they're coming into campus.
It's very
and
difficult to deal with.
It's difficult to deal with, and it's also usually statistically, there'll be a bigger tendency for violence because people who choose to go to universities and people who are afraid to be, to face the circumstances of losing school and tuitions and things like that, they would usually be more civil in their discourse. So a lot of times groups that are coming from the outside, they're not as worried about repercussion, and we see that they, have a bigger tendency to cause violence. And the other thing I think is also about university preparedness. I think we saw last year, that some universities were able to respond very quickly to the situation. And I think it's just about being prepared to anything uncertain that can happen on campus. And we saw that some campuses needed, a little bit more time to understand how to deal with illegal things that are happening on campus. Luckily, I feel like, all campuses had the summer to prepare. And organizations like Hillel International that have been working with administrations to help prepare them and make sure that all students are safe and can get the education that they're going to university to get.
Wow, have you dealt with this violence on campus in your school?
Yes, I would say last year, from stories that I heard from students, it was like much more harder and much more violent and encampments on campus. This year, I feel like last semester was a lot of protest, a lot of I've seen a lot of hate, even if it's like a poster that says like death to Israel or like these kind of things. So yeah, it's there, and I feel like my role as an Israel fellow is like to kind of have this like safe space for the students.
How do you collaborate with Hillel on campus?
I work at Hillel. I'm a staff member. I have a specific role and job, like advocating and doing things about Israel. But in the end of the day, I'm part of the staff, and yeah.
Nati, how are you able to measure the success of the program?
Yeah. So fortunately, we have many anecdotes, but we also have a lot of data. And one of the things that we're checking is we want to see how many people we're reaching and how many people we're reaching in a meaningful way. So we're using Hillel International methodology that speaks about how many people did you meet once and how many people did you meet 6+ times. Because someone that you've met 6+ times, usually, they came to get education. They came for more than a cup of coffee once.
Right.
And one interesting thing is that, according to Hillel International data, any campus with an Israel Fellow reaches double the amount of students. So if you want to reach more Jewish students, what you need is one Israel Fellow, and you will do that. And we're seeing, even before October 7, but even more so after, there are more and more students who are interested in being connected and being a part of the Jewish community and finding their place there.
That's great. Our federation and federations across the country support your program. Why is that so important?
It's not important, it's critical. It's the oxygen, because without of those donations and without that support, you don't have a program at all. You don't have an Israel Fellow, you don't have coffee chats, you don't have education. The basis of everything we do is the support of federations and donors and people who care about the cause. So it's absolutely vital.
So donors watching can be very pleased that you can measure it, you touch and feel it.
I think that any success story that we share, that Esther shared, and that we share, they can personally take credit for that.
So looking ahead to the future, what do you see? What would you like to see for Israel Campus Fellows? Esther, I'll ask you.
Yeah, I would say that being an Israel Fellow on campus, it's not just like educated about Israel only with the students. I would say that looking ahead, I feel like it should be much more like a community thing, meaning, for example, to make any leadership program between the students on college and students on high school, so they can like collaborate with each other and they can prepare them and for campus climates, and so they can be like much more prepared and they know like what to expect and everything. So
I think that's a critical component that hopefully will be put into action. How about you, Nati?
I think, first of all, thankfully the program has been expanding in the past few years and continue to expand. I want to make sure that we can reach as many campuses as possible so that every Jewish student has an opportunity to connect with an Israeli. And I think in some of the campuses we started piloting this year, having more than one fellow, because campuses are huge and there's only so much that one person can do. So having, showing the diversity as a cohort, like I said, we're so diverse. We have shlichim who are Druze, we have shlichim, that their family came from Ethiopia or from Argentina, like mine, or, our 11th generation Israelis. But what would it look like to bring that cohort diversity into each campus?
Oh, that would be remarkable. I hope that happens as well. Wow, you both have great ideas and aspirations. Thank you so much for everything that you do and joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
This program is sponsored by Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County.